I've been waiting for so long. I waited so long to finally see this animated. Like, it's actually happening. Like, it's actually happening, guys. I'm actually getting to see some of my favorite moments of ReZero finally animated. I'm so happy, bro. This makes me so happy to finally be able to talk about all this because, like, my goodness, I can't say his name. I can't say his name because of spoilers, but Stick Swinger. That's at the very least the name he gave himself at the end of the episode. I'm not gonna lie, guys. You are not ready. You are not ready. You are not ready for the absolute craziness that is about to happen. Like, you're not ready. Like, I got chills. I got chills, bro. Okay, so we gotta talk about this. ReZero, well, as tradition, does not have an ending song or even an opening song for this week's episode. And we gotta start off by just thanking the staff, the studio White Fox, that legitimately has been for the last decade giving us one of the best anime adaptations, I think, for any fantasy series, and one of the best anime, like, just for an anime adaptation in general, because obviously ReZero might not have that high quality art animation like JJK or Chainsaw Man and stuff like that, but where it lacks in that department of being super, super flashy, ReZero makes it up for fantastic character acting, voice acting, music choice, the going above and beyond to adapt as much content as possible by removing an opening and ending song. And I want to reiterate this since it's been such a long time since I talked about that fact, but you realize the studio White Fox removing an opening and ending song is such a massive, massive risk, because when you think about, like, brand deals, sponsorships and stuff like that, creating an opening song and an ending song takes time and takes money, and obviously it's supposed to be front and center for your series. It is like a big marketing thing. Like, it's like when people think of an anime, they might think of the opening and ending song first. And so, like, if they're not actually using the opening and ending song with the licensing and marketing that they had to do to get the song added on to the opening and ending song, they're technically risking losing money and upsetting the people that they license with. But in fact, this has worked so well for ReZero over these years, that's why they keep doing it. Because, for one, when you do get an opening song drop, or you do get an ending song that appears in ReZero, it is at the most important moment of the show. It's at important key moments where the opening and ending song makes just so much sense for the season, and that's exactly what is happening in this season. You can really see after all these years, despite obviously staff coming and going from Studio White Fox and not being the exact same as it was with Season 1, you can just straight up tell that there is still that love, that passion and care for ReZero since the very beginning, and it makes me so happy. Out of anything that could have happened to any anime series, I'm glad that ReZero rolled like a D20. Like, it rolled one of the luckiest rolls it can have of having a studio that legitimately loves and cares about it so much. And it's not just like the staff, but it's the voice actors. Like, the voice actors, you can tell, just absolutely love every role that they get for this show, and they go above and beyond. But with that being said, we need to talk about a few things I think is very fascinating about this episode that I feel like is now time I can talk about. We gotta talk about Shala. Shala is a very key character, obviously, with her introduction in this episode and the last episode, episode 4 of Season 4. In episode 5 of Season 5. And obviously, this character is shrouded in mystery. There's a lot of, like, things that clearly is being hidden from our knowledge that Shala is aware of. I mean, we even have in this episode, she straight up admits that, yes, there is secret rules. She doesn't fully elaborate and give in-depth details on what causes, like, certain rules to be broken or whatever. But overall, she is hiding stuff. It's very obvious that she is aware of some things that she is not telling, not just the audience, but also the cast of characters within the library. And it adds for a very mysterious and unique position for the story, because obviously typically when we get into a story for ReZero and stuff like that, obviously we know that there's characters that are probably scheming and doing things behind the scenes, but we don't know because they come off very kind and they don't try to just put it on their sleeve and tell you that they are scheming. But Shala, in this case, she just straight up says, yeah, there is secret rules, I'm not telling you, I have a contract. Like, it's just so out in the open, it's just like jarring. But at the same time, she tells you so much but so little at the same time. You're left with more questions than actually answers from what she says. Like, she says that she turns into a mindless monster. You know, when you look at her design, she has the exact same colors and design as Subaru himself. I mean, she has the whole star, like, symbolism going all over her with different parts of her design as well. And then she also apparently knows Flugel, aka, you know, Subaru in some shape or form because of smell. We'll get into that in a second, but everything about her character is mysterious, because as much as we learn about her or get to the bottom of maybe what's going on, there's like 10 other questions that appear on top of that and make you wonder, what is this character? What is the significance of this character? How is this character still alive after 400 years? Which I think is another factor that not a lot of people are really thinking about, because it's like, she is a character that was around the time of, like, the Divine Dragon, around the time of the first Sword Saint, Reed, and all of that. You know, everything about the situation, she has clearly lived a very long life. So, how is she alive? If she says that she's not a spirit of any kind, like Beatrice and stuff, so what is she? What exactly is she? But with that being said, and those questions being raised, we do need to talk about some of the aspects that are very interesting, that gives a lot of credibility to some theories that are within the community for this very moment. And I feel like it's a perfect time to discuss it, because obviously with the last episode and this episode, it makes people want to discuss this aspect. So let's get into some theory crafting for a second. Do not worry, this is not a spoiler or anything like that. It's just, it's very important to discuss, obviously, because, in general, this is the exact same thought process people had when this was coming out in the web novel and light novel. So, at this time, there is a lot of mysteries building up around Flugel, aka the sage that apparently is the master of Shala. And Shala's introduction just straight up showcases that she highly respects her master, loves him, obviously, and basically there is, her entire thing with Subaru is that, oh, you're my master, you smell exactly like him. So there is a few key details that you can kind of look at for this situation. First off, we know that Subaru has a stench, and the stench is basically has the same type of witch miasma leaking off of him, very similar to a Sin Witch Archbishop. We know that's the case. We have seen this already, that's basically kind of what comes off of him, and every time he uses Return by Death, that happens. However, it's not been as, like, he hasn't died that many times, at least for Season 4 yet, so his stench can't be that potent. So, we have to look at this situation. We know it's there, but probably not as extreme as it was maybe in Season 1 or even Season 2. So the question is that the reason why Shala is saying that he reminds her of her master? Would this mean that theoretically, if a Sin Archbishop was to walk into the place and all that, would she instantly say, you're my master? Or is it specifically Subaru, something truly about Subaru that separates him from, let's say, a Sin Archbishop and what he is? So that's the big question mark that was raised with this episode, especially with her introduction, and also how she continuously interacts with Subaru. But another little detail that is very, very important to talk about is the stars on her design. This was one that is clearly being hinted at constantly throughout this episode and the previous, where they show, like, with her, like, tail braid, or, like, you know, on her, like, hair braid, you see that there is, like, a star. And then you see also with, like, her little necklace, like, connecting her little robe and all that, you see the stars as well. There is a lot of symbolism towards stars. And this is not the first time star symbolism has appeared within ReZero, and this is the reason why Subaru even came to his conclusion in the last episode for the trial to be able to kind of pass that floor. And the reason is because the stars that was from his hometown, aka Earth, aka from Japan, and the constellations. And anyone that knows a little bit about constellations, Orion's belt, and stuff like that will instantly key in that a lot of the Sin Archbishops, they are named after stars. Actual, real, living, or not living, but real stars that are radiating out there right now in space. They are named after stars. And this has been something that's been very consistent since the very beginning of the story of ReZero. And so what this means is that the trial, the only way to pass that said trial in the previous episode was if you had actual knowledge of Subaru's hometown, or at least Earth itself. And there's only a few individuals that we know that could potentially have this type of knowledge, which would mean that someone like Echidna that was able to appear and look into Subaru's memories, or someone that was transported from Subaru's world. And so the evidence that's been provided here with the trials that were set up by Flugel himself, it indicates that he was someone of those two different possible theories. Someone that is from Subaru's hometown, or someone that is just aware of this knowledge. Now, being a sage, being someone that's the very wise wise sage and old man, they most likely can do a lot of research and discover this. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It doesn't indicate that they are someone from Japan or Earth in general. It just means that they are very wise. And so the whole point of this trial, especially with how it started for this tower, is that it is to shut down anyone that isn't aware of Subaru's world, which basically locks down pretty much probably 99.99% of people that is living within this world. And I would like to also remind something that is very important about this episode too. The actual trial, when it got completed, it unlocked this library for the Books of the Dead, which I will talk about in a moment, but you cannot even, like, glean information off of potentially people that are dead that might be aware of this knowledge, aware of knowledge of another world to some degree. You know, you can't even cheat and do that. So basically, the whole trial was literally designed for someone exactly like Subaru to come in and be able to answer it. Very malicious, very evil, and it's diabolical because it means that nobody necessarily be able to pass it, and that if they tried to leave the tower, as Shala herself said, they would die. Or they would be there for the rest of their life until they age and die of old age. One or the other. So, it is a very interesting situation by the way the whole, like, gears and everything for this situation was just orchestrated. Because if you aren't Subaru, you're done. Like, you're dead. You can't get out of the tower. Because how are you supposed to pass that trial if you don't even have pre-existing knowledge, and there's no way to gain that pre-existing knowledge going into said tower? Now, with that being said, it gets back over into the stars. So all the star symbolism and stuff that is being put on Shala makes you wonder what's going on here. Does she know? Does she know about Subaru's hometown? Is she aware of Japan and Earth itself? Or was she never told by the wise sage? Which, speaking of Flugel as a individual, I would also like to point out, like, when we saw the glimpse of the tree, like, back in Season 2, there was writing etched on the tree, and it was very brief, but the writing was not in the actual writing style that is within the world of ReZero. It is the writing style of Japanese. It's the Japanese writing style, which means that Flugel, that wrote that there into the tree, was aware of a different language that only, once again, Subaru would be aware of. Now, this, once again, does not indicate that Flugel is transported from Japan or something, but he is aware of that language too, so it gives more credibility to this entire situation. So, whatever's going on there is pretty freaking wild. And so, yeah, with all that being said, I love this episode because it really gets your mind thinking. It makes you really wonder what's next, what secrets are being hidden right now by Shala, and what is the tower hiding as well. And that gets into the next segue, which is the Book of the Dead of Typhon. Now, Typhon is a very fascinating character for one big reason. She is the Witch of Pride, and this is a very significant character, and it's definitely intentional by Tape Sensei to incorporate a character like this as the first Book of the Dead that we see. If there is any type of sin to apply to Subaru, it would be pride. That was something that even Petalugius himself, Sloth, when he was introduced to Subaru, he said multiple times through loops, are you the one that's now going to be occupying the vacant seat of Pride? And so, Subaru being able to see basically the Witch of Pride's memories, it is definitely intentional. Tape Sensei, the writer of ReZero, is purposely showcasing this, that there is definitely some connection here, not just because Subaru is aware of this person, but it's very fascinating. Out of any characters that could have been presented first for the Book of the Dead, it was this character, the Witch of Pride herself, that Subaru had a brief encounter with in the trial, within the graveyard with Echidna. So this is very big, very important, honestly. But let's get into what this backstory showcases. First off, the big indication here that we get from this is basically the origin story of the Witch of Pride herself, and how she gained her abilities and started basically having people be judged if they were a good person or a bad person. And as a very just brief rundown, this is summarizing it very briefly, basically how the power works is if you view yourself as actually a bad person, even if you're not, you will shatter into dust. And so this is a very cruel and brutal thing. Basically, that even the most righteous individual that has righteous thoughts, if they have even an inkling that they deserve some form of harm their way or they're a bad person, they will shatter into dust, which is basically what happened to Subaru in those trials in the graveyard, is that when he encountered Typhon, the Witch of Pride herself, he realized that, you know, he was a sinner, he was guilty. And Typhon pointed out that, oh, you're thinking you're a sinner, you're guilty because because of what you've done and, you know, how many people have died and all that, and that's why. So it's really interesting, honestly. I really like the character, and getting to see the origin story actually beautifully adapted. Like, this is a really good adaptation of her origin story, showcasing just, like, the diabolical nature and the devastation that a witch can do to the world. Because, like, she eradicated this whole town pretty much just so easily by just walking around and just asking them a question. And the fact that that was enough to just devastate that many people showcases why so many people are frightened and afraid of the title Witch itself, because of stuff like this. This is just one example out of the other witches that we have seen and we know about as well, so that's scary. Now, with all of that, we need to actually discuss the elephant in the room, which is the books of the dead. So, if there is one thing that this episode has pointed out, it is that the only way to be able to read these books and understand what's going on is if you are aware of the said person. For instance, you have knowledge of that said person, then you're able to read their book of the dead, which I think is very important, because the only reason why Subaru was able to read the book of the dead for Typhon, the Witch of Pride, was because of his encounter with Echidna. So, that means that there will be books that some can read and some can't, and it basically is a systematic compounding effect to where, like, you would need to pool all your resources together to get a good glimpse of what's really going on within this library. And so, it makes you start to wonder now, if every single book in here is from a person that is deceased, does this mean that Natsuki Subaru's book is theoretically in this library? That is a question. That is something you have to wonder about yourself. Wonder, because we know he's died. Would it be here? Would it not? Because obviously he's looping. There's a lot of questions. But we also have to look at Meili as well, as a character, because this interaction that she has with Subaru is very important, because she has the potential possibility to read into people's past and know what they were before they died. People that she has assassinated, her parents, and also even people that she was close with as of late. Elsa. And it makes you wonder, would she even want to read a Book of the Dead like that? Would she want to read Elsa's, for instance, because of everything that happened in Season 2 of ReZero? Obviously, from her interactions and the way she communicates to Subaru, she's not really interested in anything like that, but obviously looks can be deceiving. This is an individual that has, been able to be an assassin, put on a facade for a very long time, so for all we know, this could just be a big lie, and she would look at her parents' Book of the Dead if she was able to. But there is a lot of things here that's just really honestly awesome. I love this episode and the way it builds up mysteries and stuff. It is basically just peak ReZero. This is what I have come to love and expect from this story. Now, we do need to talk about a few things when it comes to this new trial. I'm not going to give too much details here, but this guy in question, there is definitely some indications here on maybe some connections he has with others, and I will save those thoughts for the next episode of ReZero when it does come out. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. It does help me out a lot, and I would greatly appreciate it. Helps out the channel a lot to be noticed, and I would like to honestly hit 500,000 subscribers this year if it's possible. If it's not, it's not, but I would like to hit that. But you all have a fantastic day or night wherever you live. Be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.